Well, good day everyone, and welcome to our special Showdown 57 edition of the Weekend Wrap, brought to you by Crowcast, of course. A happy tale to tell with regards to the game. Pardon, my camera is just a little bit glitchy, so if I skip around a little bit, that's I don't know what's going on there, but I haven't had time to fix it. But we're all good, we're all on deck, we're all happy and ready to go. So without any further ado, let's crack straight in, shall we? Here we are. Welcome, gentlemen. Welcome, everyone, to our Showdown 57 edition of the Weekend Wrap, brought to you by Crowcast, of course. We have a full deck and plenty in the audience there, and people filing in on YouTube, which is great. Good to see everyone. Don't forget, we are live and interactive, so if you want to have your say on Showdown 57 then, and you're in the Discord audience, feel free to stick your hand up during the course of the evening. But in the meantime, I will welcome my cohorts. Big man, how are you, sir?
I'm fantastic, mate. Always good when you can beat Port, even though, it wasn't our best performance, but 4 points is 4 points.
Absolutely. Macca, how are you?
I like what Big Man said, but, a win's a win, and so I'm quite happy about that.
And Brownie, how you going, mate?
Yeah, really good. Thanks, mate. Similarly, I was really happy with the win. Probably a little bit shocked that it came down to the wire, but yeah, 4 points is 4 points.
Most certainly. And Jeffrey in slightly better nick than myself this evening, so if I start nodding off halfway through, just give me a nudge and we'll power on. But look, first things first, I guess it was an excellent win under the circumstance. I watched it. I didn't watch it till this afternoon because I haven't had an engagement yesterday. We'll have a lot to say about the game, I'm sure. But at the end of the day, a showdown win's a showdown win, isn't it, big man? And they're always close. They're always messy. They're always sort of one-off football matches where form often goes out the window, and you're just happy to walk away with 4 points, right?
That's exactly right. And look, to be fair, we've had past games and past showdowns where we've dominated stat lines and lost. Yep. So obviously we didn't win many of the stats on the weekend, and we still got the win, which probably says a bit about that we've got some star power in the team now. And that we got some players that did the right things, had the clutch moments in Rankin and a few others stepped up when they had the opportunity. And there weren't too many opportunities, but when they were there to be taken, they grabbed them. So every game's different. You can't always win every stat or play as good as you want to every game. The fact that we still managed to get the win against a team that came to play, I think it's probably a really good sign, even though obviously, I'd like to think we play better next time we play them.
Macca, I think Big Man's comment there about star power is pertinent. We had big RT in the first half and then Ranks in the last quarter, and sometimes that's the difference. It was nearly the difference for Port, but in the end, our star power won out.
Oh, it's a really good point, actually, because without those stars, we would have lost. I mean, we, as Big Man indicated, we got thrashed. When you go through all the stats, we got thrashed. And if you didn't know the result, you'd say, well, how much did Port win by? So I just think that is a sign of maturity in the team, that they can actually take a beating like that in the stats, but still hang tough enough to last. And as you mentioned, just those couple of heroes that Phil thought, well, he was just a one out in the first half where he just dominated up forward, and he still did well around the ground, and probably should have got the votes, I think, for BOG because of his efforts, because they were match winning. Rankin and those couple of goals he got in the last quarter, well, not many other players would have got them. So they are stars, and they stood up when it really, really, really counted. And look, I'm proud of our boys because, as I said, we got killed in the stats, and yet we still won the game.
Well,
Yeah,
not only
and
did
I was
we
going
get
to say
killed
just
in go on, big man.
sorry, yeah. So I was just going to also add to that was that it was a bit of an interesting case study of an elite forward line actually beating an elite midfield because their midfield went gangbusters, particularly Rosie and Butters, and obviously our forwards stood up, Fogg, Thilthorpe, Rankin, and yeah, it's just an interesting case of an elite forward line beating an elite midfield, and because usually people say the game's won and lost in a midfield, but that wasn't the case on the weekend.
Well, yes, and Branny, I was going to ask you. Obviously, we got spanked by their midfield, particularly around stoppage, and I just, did we win in spite of maybe some tactical and selection choices that were made before and during the game?
Yeah, I think, we definitely made them. We had 20 less inside 50s, and I think we showed our class in the forward line and converted, opportunities a lot better than Port did. If you look at that last quarter, Port had numerous opportunities to score goals and probably should have put us away, but just didn't take their chances. And also combined with our defence stood up pretty well when you consider how many times the ball came in. But yeah, I think you're right. Overall, I think we actually showed class. It's the first time that you'd probably say over Port class has prevailed in the last 5 years, and it's good to see.
I guess what I was referring to is, given that their strength was their midfield, I was actually a little bit surprised that Berry started as the sub. And I felt because Berry was started on the sub, it actually limited our rotation options. And I felt like, we stuck with the four, basically Peatling, Soligo, Dawson and Rankin for the majority of the match. Rochelle got a couple of rotations late. But I just felt like Berry would have been the bloke to start, just to not only give us a bit more grunt in the contest, because let's face it, all their midfielders are basically grunt midfielders. Butters and Horn Francis, etc., Wines and Drew, they're all grunt midfielders. And I also feel like it would have given us a few more options in terms of rotations, allowed us to switch Dawson out of that rotation and take Bergman's tag out of the midfield and sort of into places that he mightn't have been as comfortable. I felt it was a real poor decision. And that's nothing against Nankervis, because I thought Nankervis, particularly early, wasn't too bad. But I felt like he would have been the better option, or even Dan Curtin, to be honest with you, would have been the better option starting as a sub in this particular match.
Can't argue with that. No, I totally agree with you. Yeah, okay. I thought Berry showed when he came on as a sub last week that, he is in good touch at the moment. I mean, because to come in cold and yet do what he did when he came on last week, I thought that was very, very good. And he showed dash, he showed pace, he was hard at the ball. And I'm like you, very, very surprised that he didn't actually get a Guernsey to start, because there was a spot there for him. So, and
it's probably a great indication that they just obviously did not expect the Bergman tag on Dawson. If they knew going in that Dawson was going to get that sort of tag, I'm sure Berry would have started as sub, because we could have then moved Dawson out of there and played Berry in there. So it caught us by surprise, and it was a good move by Port. We haven't seen that before. Bergman playing in the midfield like that, and he got the job done, and it really rattled us in the midfield because, unfortunately, apart from Peatling, none of the other boys really stood up in there.
Yeah, I thought Soligo tried hard, Brownie. He got a lot of it, but for whatever, he had one of those nights where everything he touched turned to mud, sort of thing. Like a lot of his disposals were turned over, and I felt like he was trying, but maybe the pressure just impacted his disposal a bit. How did you see his game?
Yeah, I thought Endeavour was fantastic, but definitely he was kicking around corners or kicking under pressure, and didn't have the time to sort of drop the eyes and find a target.
A couple of his handballs
and also, I don't think,
were pretty average.
Yeah, he missed a few targets, but he still got the ball. I mean, if you compare him to Rankin just wasn't finding the ball in the middle at all. That's why I thought, going back to Berry, after that really encouraging sort of quarter and a bit that he played last week, it would have been a great time to actually reward him with a full game in the guts and just, let him try and keep the role going. But obviously, the way that Nix thinks, he goes back to the old favourites every time.
Yeah, your microphone's just booming a little bit there. Can you just turn it down just a notch?
Certainly.
Yeah, look, there were a couple of things during the course of the game. I felt our lack of effort to shut them down. We had A and B on Rosie. God, I mean, one of those nights.
Still on the wines, mate.
Yeah, it's still on the wines. Bloody hell. On Rosie, which was pretty ineffective. Rosie was pretty dominant and damaging in that first half, but I just feel like we didn't make a lot of effort to shut down where they were getting their drive, and it really smacked of a try harder for longer kind of approach from Nix. Whereas Port were more proactive, as we've talked about. Bergman sat on Dawson, I think, did a pretty good job. I felt like we just sat back and relied on. I think Nix really relies on our strength up forward. But Rosie should have kicked that snap goal 2 minutes out at the end, and that would have been game over. They missed some easy shots and missed some easy opportunities to ice that game. And, with about 10 minutes to go, when we kicked the last of our goals, it was like Nix put the cue in the rack, and, we didn't get Thilthorpe involved in the contest at all in the last quarter. In the last couple of minutes, even in that last contest with a minute and a bit to go after we'd sort of sealed the game, we had players forward instead of behind the ball. I think he's tactically inept, Macca. We've seen this a lot in close games where we have not handled the situation well. And I think this was another one where he was basically lucky to get over the line.
I was spewing, absolutely spewing, because he just summed it up very well there. They're in those dying stages. When we had the lead, we had to. There's not much point in us. There was a boundary throw in, I remember that. And our bloody forwards all ran into their forward position instead of running back to crowd it. I just couldn't believe it. There's obviously no message sent out to them at all, and also nobody on the field with the nous to realise it. It was just incredible that you could actually take that gamble with the players running forward and just leave it just in the normal position up forward for Port, which with them who'd been bombarding the bloody goals that quarter. It was just madness. And as you said, obviously no good coaching, no direction. There was, and I agree with you about the selections as well. I really thought that Berry should be starting. That's without we have covered that, but that's just a part of, I think, his poor coaching for the game. And Dawson, I think Dawson should have gone out of the midfield, and they should have used not just Rankin, but. Well, there's other people. Shelley could have gone in there. I mean, other players could have gone in there. He just kept doing the same thing, and there's no doubt that Bergman actually really got the better. I thought he won it. I mean, if you go and look at the stats, he really won the duel, really, with Dawson. So, but I just think that I think we've got an honest coach, but he's not a smart coach.
No, big man, there were a few things I felt like could have happened. Riccelli was struggling to get into the game, and as we saw last week, you get him into the centre mix and get him around the ball and it fires him up, it starts him up, and I feel like we could have gotten involved gotten him involved in the centre mix a lot earlier, we could have chucked, as a consequence, we could have chucked Dawson either back across half back or up forward, which has worked in the past. I think a lot of that comes back down to not having the flexibility in the middle. Ranks, I thought, was getting a bit touched up, and we could have used a bit of his magic up forward at times earlier in the piece. I just felt like we were very stagnant in the way we played the game. How did it look like at the ground?
Yeah, well, I mean, earlier in the year, we preached flexibility and particularly having a lot of players run through the CBAs. And as you mentioned earlier, we only had 4 guys really get majority centre bounce tendencies. So, it feels like we were just a bit stale in that regard. And particularly once it became obvious that Dawson wasn't getting much ball because of the Bergman tag, we should have flicked him out there. We had Keys up forward who had a pretty good game, but he could have run through there. Neil Bullen, Rochelle, as Macca mentioned, even Zack Taylor. Or you could have even put Dawson to half back and maybe tried, Michael Lundy or Miller or someone in there as well, just to give it a different look and see, challenge Bergman that way. Make Bergman play as essentially a half forward. That it is a bit concerning that Nix wasn't able to identify that quick enough, or even if he did, for our coaching staff as a whole not to make the necessary changes there, because it never really stopped. For the most part, we just kept losing the clearances. I will say for a lot of them weren't massively, particularly clean from Port.
No,
there weren't too many bursts ahead of the stoppage where you just opened the field up, and I don't imagine they would have scored heaps from centre bounce particularly. But, at the end of the day, what it does do is it puts your defenders on so much pressure because that inside 50 differential. And, our defenders had so much to do, and they actually did a really good job considering. The midfield needed to help them out, and the coaches needed to be part of that. And I agree that I think also, even moving a Neil Bourne or Keys in there, maybe particularly to put some heat on Butters, because Butters was so good in the clinches, that could have made a difference too. And once again, we allow opposition teams to dictate things a bit too much, particularly when it comes to loose defenders and gun inside mids.
Well, Port scored 5-8 from stoppage and 6-4 from turnover. Most of their score came from forward half stoppage or turnovers. So they were able to generate repeat 50s. We didn't seem to be able to get a lot of clean disposal chain. Whilst a lot of their clearances weren't clean, I agree with you on that one. And we seem to be content to let them have those scrappy ones. They were still getting a lot of reward in terms of just being able to bundle the ball forward. I must admit, in my dusty state today, I was, and knowing the result, you're always a little bit less passionate when you know the result. But even so, I was still getting frustrated at the fact that we just were pretty static in terms of the way we played the game, and it was almost like he was playing a game of poker and he was just decided to hold.
Yeah.
All right. Let me have a look. The other thing to say about that too, I mean, we do pile on Nick's Brownie, but there's 738 blokes in that coach's box. Surely they're all throwing bloody jaffas at Nixie down the front there and saying, "Oh, you got to do something about it." Obviously he has a final say and he takes on things on board, but you would think that surely 7 sets of eyes, or however many sets of eyes there are in that coach's box, they'd be able to see what's going on.
Yeah, you wonder with the midfield coach how the hell he didn't want to, toss some balls in the air and try something different after the first half. Like coming out the second half, we needed to try and generate some run from the midfield, and the fact that we just did the same old thing again was pretty frustrating. I don't know. It's been going on for so long, and nothing seems to change. But surely like Rochelle through the midfield in the second half was a no-brainer because he did so much good stuff the week before. And I think it still highlights the fact that Berry wasn't in there. I think it was a perfect game for him to be in there.
Yeah. Oh, Mac had just fell off his chair. Where'd you go, Mac?
No, I'm here.
I think I went.
Oh, you did?
Something wrong with my... Yeah, that's all right. I'll come back.
Get your act together, mate. I got Macca split across 2 screens now.
Oh, have you? Gee, that's harsh.
So, yeah, I know. It's harsh for everyone.
Oh, God, I'm tired working on 2.
Hang on, let me get you back in, Brownie. Oh dear. All right. Okay, so let's just straighten up and get to the format. Of course, it was the Crows by 5 points, 13-11 to 12-12. Let's run through some stats real quick, and the stats are poor reading for Adelaide. Only 107 handballs for the night. I think halfway through early in the last quarter, it was only like 90 or something. Disposal efficiency were a little bit up on them, but it wasn't really evident. Although Port, one of the reasons Port lost, I think, was their inability to maintain possession. They turned it over far more often than we did. Their inside 50s, they had a stack in the last quarter. Ended up 62-41 in their favour. Efficiency inside 50, obviously 47% to Port to 56 from the Crows. Again, centre clearances weren't too bad, but we got absolutely destroyed around stoppage. 42 to 18 stoppage clearances is just incredible. I've not seen a disparity around stoppage for as long as I can remember. O'Brien, I thought, was pretty reasonable against that young ruckman, who I've got a lot of time for, Vincenti, actually. I think he's going to be all right.
He's got a future.
But I think so, but I thought Riley did well at the hit-outs, and I feel like he had more of an impact on the game, both positively and negatively at times. Sometimes he forgets that he's a ruckman and he shouldn't get in the way of a bloody handball that's intended for somebody else. As I mentioned, turnover 71 to 56 was a key element, I think. I think even Hinkley pointed that out in his press conference. Tackles 59 to 77. I think both teams were hard at it. I think that just indicates they were first to the ball a little bit more often than we were. So really, as you said, Mac, the stats kind of say, how the hell did we win it?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at those stats and the number of times they entered the 50, and I know a lot of them were in the last quarter, but they were still entering there. And the one thing that did save us was we did have a much better efficiency rate, had a better efficiency rating going forward. And really, the star power, which was brought up by Big Man, I think that was really a big factor, because if you take out Philthorpe, you take out Rankin, I think we would have got done by about 12 goals, something like that. I mean,
That's
no, seriously, we just replaced with average players, because Philthorpe, not
but
only
I don't think you can.
goal,
I don't think you can do that, Mac. Like to be, and without, I don't want to be rude, but I think you can't say, if we didn't have him or him. Well, the fact is that we do, and you play accordingly, right? So,
others pick up the slack as well.
Yeah, I think it's reasonable to say, that you play to your strengths, and that one of our strengths is our, forward strength. But I do pick up on your point. Sorry, carry on.
Yeah, I probably exaggerated a little bit much there, but the point is it was crucial to the win. That was really the point I was trying to get at. Because no Philthorpe and no Rankin, and we would have definitely lost that game. And that last goal that Rankin kicked, there aren't too many footballers in the competition whose brain works that quickly that they can actually reflex themselves after having a previous attempt, and to actually get that ball while it's in midair and get it on the angle and get it through the goal at a crucial time. And the guy's just outstanding in terms of things like that. And Thilthorpe, of course, he was just a massive presence up forward. Because even when he didn't mark it, it's still just, they couldn't mark it. They had to just get it to ground, which gave us another opportunity. We did mention tactically about, Dawson could have gone down back. He could have gone right up forward again. I mean, bad coach.
We had to do something. We had to do something to get Dawson freed up, and I guess what it boils down to, from my perspective, Brownie, is that at no stage I didn't feel like Nick's made any moves to make Hinkley and Carr think. Like, we didn't make ourselves difficult to play against. We relied on our inherent strengths, but we just didn't make any moves during the course of the match to make the Port coaching box go, oh shit, how are we going to deal with that?
Yeah, and I think the idea of pushing Dawson forward the way he's marking the ball at the moment would have been fantastic. And you could have even thought outside the square and potentially, you could have, Taylor Walker was having a pretty minimal, he got a little bit of the ball, but he had minimal impact in the game. His disposals weren't really efficient. You could have even subbed him off as part of that mix, got Berry on and pushed Dawson forward sort of later in that, or the middle of the third quarter. But yeah, it's just that we're not. Yeah, there's obviously plenty of things that can be done, and they just sit on their hands and think if we just keep working through it, we'll get a result. But sometimes you have to do something different.
I think at the end of the day, big man, we won it. But had we lost it, we would be scathing about the coaching and do you know what I mean? A win papers over a lot of things. And we can point to it and say, well, we won the game, and we won the game, so that's fine. So, the coaching box will say, well, we were vindicated, but I think Port lost it more than we won it, based on the stats and their opportunities in the last quarter, particularly when we put our cue in the rack so early. And I think that's the key consideration. Had they made the most of those opportunities and we lost the game, I think we would be egging Matthew Nix's house right now.
Might do that anyway, mate. Now, look, it's interesting because if you watch the game as a whole, I think that it was definitely a bit of a to and fro. There wasn't really a dominant team per se, even though the stats would suggest that Port were. I think we certainly had enough control of the majority of the game, and we're up by 3 or 4 goals with about 10 minutes to go.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, in that sense, it was really only after that Port really got going, and obviously had repeat inside 50s and had lots of shots of goal, and I think that's that margin in the end. It was obviously a close game, but we really allowed to get close by bottling it up so much in that last 10 minutes, and once again we have an inability to close out games. That's really concerning to me because that's been an issue for a while. It was another close game. It didn't have to be close, and our players either are instructed poorly or they just didn't handle the moment particularly well. We shut the game down too early. So you go.
Far to it. No, I was going to say, what's the stat for games where the Crows games where the margin's been less than 2 goals under Nix? I think we're 6 and 18 or something.
It's absolute shit house. Yeah. And yeah, so look, I think it seemed like that first, like, when about 10 minutes to go, the next few minutes we really closed down shop, and it seemed like the boys realised that this is not working, and then we tried to get going again, and then we still kept making errors, and then we couldn't get the play on our terms at all. We just couldn't control the football. It was all Port Adelaide. So, like I said, I think that as much as it was a close game in the end, that game was done. It was there. It was basically cooked, and we almost obviously lost the unlosable. So that's a concern. But at the same time, like I said, I'm not too upset by how it went down because I think we had enough momentum throughout the game. It didn't feel like we stole that win, if that makes sense. We were leading for quite a bit of it.
I disagree with that. Port were up by a couple of goals halfway through the second quarter. They had some momentum. It was only a little burst at the beginning, or towards the end of the third and the beginning of the fourth, that we skipped clear by 20 odd points. And and it felt like we had momentum then. And I feel like, he got Rankin up forward, which I thought was a good roll of the dice to try and get him ahead of the ball. And, he had a massive input, that little handball give off the crumb that set up Fogarty's snap. And then, of course, his direct contributions with that messy goal. He made a real impact. But I feel like that's where you run away with the game. It was almost like he was trying to keep everything in close and in tight for 3/4 and then turn the tap on in the last. And having to turn the tap on by making that move, putting Rochelle into the middle for a couple of CBAs and taking Rankin up forward to allow him to work his magic. It's almost like, all right, well, that's okay. I can deal with that. But then to basically go, all right, we've done enough scoring now. It's like, what the hell are you doing? This is where we end up winning by 36 points, not lose the damn game.
Yeah.
Mac?
And
what do you reckon about that?
Sorry, I was going to say, I'll just go quickly before you, Mac. Like I sort of alluded to earlier, though, like sometimes these games happen, and the fact that we won is actually not the worst thing, because even though it does paper over cracks, we've been on the receiving side of this. I remember there was a game. Gee, I'm going fair way back here, but it might have been like 2014 or 2015. We were playing Hawthorn at Adelaide Oval, and our mids absolutely dominated. I think Sloan and Crouchy had 40 touches each, and all that stuff, and it didn't matter. Like, we just still didn't win. We dominated possession, we dominated clearances, and we still couldn't get the win. So the fact that we were able to still kick goals and have a pretty decent system with our ball movement and everything, and cash in when required. I think that's a positive in a way. As much as there's some alarm bells with our midfield and something, and obviously the way we closed out the last quarter. At the same time, I think you also have to look and think, well, we managed to win a game there where we lost so many stats. Like, is there not upside in that? Because you look at last week against Carlton, we dominated them in a lot of the stats that Port dominated us. So every game's different, and I think the fact that we still managed to have enough class to get the result is a positive, as much as there's obviously some concerns there.
Yeah, I think if you looked at it in isolation, Macca, you'd say that that's probably fair. But I think Vardy put up the stat. We were 8 from 27 with matches decided by under a goal. So it's definitely a trend, isn't it?
Well, it is, because what I can't understand is that in the game, if you look at the game, in the first quarter we started off very, very well, and we got the first couple of goals off memory, and we were looking good, but then somehow we just, I don't know whether it's when we do some rotations or whatever, but all of a sudden it just started to turn around again, and then that happened in the second quarter, happened in the third quarter, happened in the last quarter. So whether it's us or whether it's just they lift, I don't really know. But at times, in each of those quarters, we looked like we were going to be the better side, but in none of those cases we go on with it. And which that I suppose you got to take into account that they're desperate for the ball as well. But by the same token, we must have been doing something right to get those goals in the manner that we did. And it just amazes me that we just can't maintain it. And as I said, whether that's us or the opposition, I'm not sure.
Now, like I've mentioned every week, we are live and interactive. And so if you'd like to have your say and you're sitting in the Discord studio audience, then feel free to stick your hand up. And one person who we haven't heard from a while is Mordot. So how you going, mate?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, mate. How you going?
Good. I just wanted to come on quickly to say how good is Riley Philthorpe. If we don't have Riley Philthorpe on the park last night, we lose by 6 goals. That guy is an actual beast. He's a beast. His contested marking is just, you could see it early in his career, the first 2 years, but he's just improved so fast. And he's the best young key forward in the game. He's better than Darcy. He's got everything. He's got absolutely everything. He's so good in the ruck. He's so good up forward. if we don't have him last night, we lose. It's as simple as that. And
so you're Riley's brother.
I know you guys have talked. No, but you guys have just been talking about it. But the last 10 minutes of the game, anyone could have seen what was going to happen when Nix went into that full defensive mode. That's just really poor coaching. And the question now is, will Nix actually learn from that he went full defensive and too early? He won't, but I think he won't learn from it. What do you guys think? Do you think he's going to learn his lesson?
No, I think,
go by.
and I think, and I'd like the others' opinion of this. I was thinking about this afternoon. Why Nixie hasn't been more successful earlier in his tenure, and I think what it boils down to is this. I think he's a very conservative coach, and I think he's got a squad that approach doesn't actually suit. We're not a squad like St Kilda or a team like that. We've got a lot of attacking players that can play with flair. We've got a lot of scoring power up forward. Like, if we let off the leash, we're probably the most attacking, scoreboard aggressive side in the competition. And I think it comes down to, big man, that the coach that we have is not suited to the squad that he has under his control. What would you say about that?
I think that's a pretty fair assessment. When I look at our list, I see a lot of talent, particularly in the forward half. Decent amount of skill. We've got some speed in there as well now, and the best way to take advantage of that is to play an attacking game plan. And obviously, that can result in shootouts sometimes. Which we look at the Essendon game earlier in the year, and they kicked 100 points, but we still kicked 160. That's not ideal all the time, but at the same time, I'd rather that than the opposite. You look at a team like Fremantle, who particularly last year were just chipping it around, even though they had players that you'd think would be more suited to an offensive game plan. And they're still in stuck in a bit of a rut in terms of that, although obviously not against us a few weeks ago. So yeah, I agree with that. Conservatism doesn't work with this group, and it hasn't really worked with us for a long time. And has that sort of slowed the game down, flap your arms, chip it around, waste time when you got a 3 to 4 goal lead? Has that ever worked for us? Even the last 10 to 20 years, I feel like that's been a death knell for quite a while. So, yeah, I'm not a fan of that. And I can understand it 2-3 minutes to go, maybe, but not so far in advance. There's still so much of that game to play, and we just handed the momentum straight back to them. So, and your question before was would Nix learn? Well, history would suggest no. He's pretty stubborn, and he's my take would be that he's probably thinking it was the right idea, wrong execution, which I think that's I'm assuming I'm assuming things there that he might think, oh, we got things wrong, or Murray Davis or whatever who was involved there, but yeah, I think history would suggest that Nixie that's what Nixie wanted, and we just didn't execute, which is not the way we should go about it.
The players came out after the game. And said it wasn't Nix shutting the game down. It's that he said he wanted them to control the game. It wasn't like they were going full shut the game down with 10 minutes to go. But I don't believe that. You could just see the mentality shift at the 10-minute mark. They all just went full defensive. Didn't want to go through the corridor. They just wanted to kick it down the boundary line. It was crap. I was shitting myself that last 10 minutes, because I knew, I'm like, oh my God, here we go. This is going to end up very badly. But we got so lucky. We were so lucky to win that, guys. I know you guys probably know more about football than me, but we were extremely lucky to win that game. We were not supposed to win that game. Ball kick straight, we lose.
Call it controlling the game.
So you go, Finn.
I was just going to say, whether you call it controlling the game or whether you call it shutting the game down, the outcome is that he wanted us to maintain possession, slow the tempo, maintain possession. I call it whatever you like, but that's what it boils down to, and it was just the wrong time to do that. And if that's the way they've trained it at training, then it's not been effective.
Yeah. So Brownie, that Berry kicks that point with a few seconds to go.
Yeah.
If the game was another 1.5 minutes to go, they have the kick in. Do you think we lose the game?
I think there's a very good chance. And going back to what Rob was just saying then about asking for a change in game style, even if it is just controlling the ball, all of a sudden their mindset has changed from attacking and trying to continue to score. So we're 22 points up and we're flying, and then all of a sudden their mindset changes and their attacking game goes out the window. There was absolutely no need for him to change anything at that point. And I don't understand. It's like where you say he's conservative. That's the epitome of being conservative. And he's been conservative in his whole tenure. He's been conservative in selection, and he's been conservative with his coaching for the whole time. So there's not a chance he's going to learn his lesson, because that's just him.
Yeah, that's right. That's his way, isn't it, Mac?
It is. The other thing I could say, in fairness to him, was the fact that we'd had a very limited number of inside 50s anyhow, and when we were playing our normal style of game. So I think he himself was doubting whether we would win the game if we kept on doing that. Now, whether he's right, whether he's not, I don't know. But I think he just pulled the plug too early on. Well, I don't know whether the instructions were to go as full stop as we did in terms of attacking, and he may have meant something different to that, but it's hard to believe that he, and if he did, well, then he's done. If he really told them to just completely just control the ball and don't worry about scoring. I mean, the best way to win a game is to score, and there's no doubt about that. And we didn't look like we were trying to do that. We looked like we were just trying to hang on by our bootlaces. And once, when you're playing in that mode, the opposition lift. They lift because
they see a sniff. They get a sniff.
Yeah, you give me, look. That's the one thing you don't. That's why I don't like the pulling the move that he did, because a good team, and Port Adelaide have very good players in their team. They mightn't be playing at their very best, but they have really good, some class players. And if you give them a sniff, which we did, and they responded to it. And in that last quarter, they were just bombarding us, and it's because we had changed what we were doing. So they went
through a period.
Their style.
Yeah, they went through a period where they hadn't scored for 30 odd minutes. We had
Correct.
them on toast, and the biggest pressure you can put on a team when they're not scoring is scoreboard pressure. And we had the thing that bothers me about the whole thing is that he didn't recognise that after that 3/4 of an arm wrestle that we broke them. We actually broke them, and we were starting to score more freely. Obviously, us banging on 3 goals real quick and getting 20 odd points up is a bit demoralising. And then for whatever reason, you stop being aggressive, and a team like Port, particularly with their mid like Butters and Horn Francis, who I thought was excellent in the second half,
Quality mid.
They get another sniff and they go, well, they've pulled up stumps. We're still in this.
Yep.
Mordot, anything else, mate, from you?
Just to say, the good thing I think about this win is that we get a free crack at Collingwood next week, right? So that's what the mentality should be, right? We go in, we got a free crack at them. What are we now? We're 6-3, right? So, the pressure's off. I think we'll go well this week. Okay, I don't know if it'll be enough to win, but we have. Hopefully, Collingwood have some injuries. I heard that Dacos got a pectoral injury and Elliott's got an abdominal injury or something. Not sure if they'll get up, but let's hope they don't.
It's a real kick in the guts for
I think it's a free
Elliott.
crack, right?
Yeah. Look,
okay.
we will
get up probably.
We will explore tomorrow's game more at the end, but I don't disagree with you, mate. Thanks for your input as always. I will shuffle you back to back to the mob. If anyone else wants to have their say during the course of the show, please stick your hand up and we'll get you on. All right, let's just talk about a few individuals. I'm not, again, as usual, I've just picked a couple to highlight without necessarily suggesting they were our best, but I felt that they had key moments in the game. Josh Worrell, I thought, was, along with Mark Kane, probably our best defender. 23 disposals, 5 marks, 8 intercepts, 5 score involvements. Importantly, 714 metres gained. Is he now our most important defender, Brownie, you reckon?
Yeah, I think he definitely is. And yesterday he was very dominant. He probably didn't quite take as many intercept marks as he has, but the beauty about him was under pressure, he was still hitting targets. His efficiency coming out of defence is just unbelievable. He's very rarely missing targets. And yeah, I think he's tough. He tackles well. Yeah, I had him as our best yesterday, or up with Phil Thorpe, obviously. I mean, Phil Thorpe, if he'd played the last quarter strongly, would have been clearly our best. But I thought Worrell was up there with him, and he's just getting to the point where he's got to be in the conversation for All-Australian this year.
100%. Matt?
Yeah, look, I thought Phil Thorpe obviously was number one. I thought Worrell was outstanding in the back lines, and I mean he's grown as a player, and there's no doubt about that. And I read an article where he spoke about himself and how what he's done to help make himself get where he is. And I would say that he's getting towards the elite in terms of being a backman at the moment, because his defence is very, very good. He's not frightened to take a hit when he's going for the ball. He tackled very well, and his disposal, Brownie hit it right on the head there. Even when he's under great pressure, he looked for a man and generally finds it. So I thought I didn't have him as our second best. I thought Phil Thorpe was absolutely outstanding. Sorry, I take that back. I did have him as my second best. I did have him as my second best because he was so good. I mean, but Phil Thorpe, I mean, he was elite. After him, well, there were several players that had good contributions.
Don't get ahead of yourself. Don't get ahead of yourself. We're talking about Worrell.
I'm not. Yeah, but I'm not going to say their names because
I know your mind. I know your mind wanders, old man. But like,
no, I mean it was moving along a bit, but no, look, I have to say that Worrell's got to be. He has to be considered for All-Australian on his current form. I can't think of any backman that every week has done as well as he's done, and you can see the guy growing in front of your eyes. I mean, he's just growing every game, and he was out. I think he's outstanding again.
Yeah, big man at the ground. You were there, obviously, and it seems to me that his positioning is now it's improved out of sight, and that, along with his aggressiveness and competitiveness, but also a lift in his composure, as Vardy pointed out in the chat, has really lifted him to that next level.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think this also shows just the importance of getting games into a player. Like, he's only just reached 40 games, or will this weekend. So, I mean, that's just natural improvement, isn't it? That comes of age and experience, and he looks so much more confident out there, and he's had a really good year and particularly a great month of footy. And he's been solid as a rock, and not just him on the weekend, but also I think also Geordie Butt's coming in the team. As much as I want Murray to be back in there when fit. He's obviously he did a decent job on Georgiadis, and I think he's also allowed Mark Keane to play a lot better footy. I don't think it's a coincidence that Keane has played better footy since Jordan Butts came in the team, and Worrell, he's been probably the most consistent defender back there all year, other than probably Mitch Hinge. So I'm loving what he's doing, and I agree with Macca. He's definitely in All-Australian territory. It always takes a bit longer for these guys to get recognised. I still think a lot of the media wouldn't recognise Woz if they walked past him on the street. But, his last, I'd say 3 or 4 games has been elite. Even against Freo when we were dog shit, he was our best player. So I'm loving what he's doing at the moment.
Yeah. The other bloke that I want to just have a quick talk to, because I thought he was our most effective and consistent midfielder for the night, was James Peatling, who continues to grow in stature, in my opinion. 24 touches, 11 contested, 14 uncontested, 5 score involvements, 427 metres gained, but importantly, in my opinion, 12 tackles. And you could see him hanging on the back of bloody Butters and Horn Francis at times all night. By far, in my opinion, our most tenacious midfielder. And Mac gets enough of the ball to be damaging, and he's not the tidiest bloke, but he just doesn't give up, does he?
And you stopped me. That's where I was going to go. I was going straight to Peatling, so you were quite.
I knew that. That's why I just
right.
thought I'd like put you on pause for a minute, mate.
Yeah, I love Peatling's efforts. I was really wanting us to get him when he was up on the market, and all the 6 teams were all vying for him, and because I'd seen how he was starting. The guy, he's a late bloomer, and he's starting to bloom with us, and every game he plays with us, and every year he plays with us, he's just going to get better and better, because he's one of those that, as I said, they didn't, when they were 18, 19, 20, they're okay, but they're not quite there. And then they start to get the hang of it, and they start to develop the nous and the smarts and the effort and all the rest of it. And, I think that's probably one of his best games with us. And I think every game he plays with us, eventually he's going to get to the stage where he's going to be a really, really damaging midfielder. I mean, he was good, really good, but he was having to deal with a very, very classy mob, and he worked his ass off trying to stop him. I mean, you mentioned the 12 tackles, and I think that's critical. Because there's no player that got anywhere near that. So, Dawson he had pretty good effort there. But no, Peatling, I love him. I think he's really good. And you can't ask much more than he did, considering that we were getting beaten overall in the midfield because they have it's not just one person. They've got a quality squad in that midfield, and that's what he's working up against. So, yeah, I like his game. Good.
Yeah, his follow-up second efforts and his repeat efforts, like his stats show that he gets a lot of secondary contested possession out of clearance and a lot of ground ball. And as Firewalker in the chat pointed out, 32 pressure acts, Brownie. How do you see his game?
Yeah, similarly, I think, he's not the cleanest, but he's clearly got a great motor, and that's the reason why his second efforts and his tackles are so consistent, because he's got that motor. And I think from a skill point of view, and having a little bit more composure, I think that'll just come with time. I think he's got massive upside, but what he brings to the table is just massive pressure, and I think he's sort of sets the level in terms of that. Saligo is probably the next best when it comes to that, but no, he's been fantastic for our midfield mix, and I think, as I said, he's just going to get better with time.
And Big Man Brownie mentioned upside. You know, it's not often you get a bloke who debuts as a 21-year-old. He's now had 4 or 5 AFL standard pre-seasons, but he's only played 50 games or 53. And, as both Brownie and Macca point out, he's just starting to expose his upside, in my opinion. And it's a unique sort of player profile, isn't it?
It is, and it's not the traditional pathway. And, usually when it comes to midfielders, you want the elite guys that are top 5, 10 picks, and he's not that. He's had to work his way up through different means, and but I think he's showing all the qualities that you want in a midfielder. He's not as polished as some of the other boys, but he's not bad with his foot skills and his decision making. I think particularly going inside 50s, he's really been strong this year. And I think his score involvements and particularly his goal assist numbers are really high for a midfielder. So that's been a great thing to see, because I didn't expect him to be so good in that regard. I knew he was going to bring tenacity and tackling and everything, but I didn't expect him to be so good offensively. And I just love, I wasn't surprised he had a good night, because not only has he been in good form, but also he just seems to relish the contest and enjoy physical contact and everything that comes with that and the argy-bargy. And there's just a little bit of Rory Sloane about him. He's not he's not as good in the he's not as good in the air as Sloaney, but he's got that similar sort of wiry frame, and he gets around opponents. He's stronger than he looks, and he's very dogged in the way he plays. So he's great. He's a great foil to some of the other boys who got in there. Obviously, I'd love for the other mids to play better than they did, but I agree with the rest that he was our best before mid by some margin.
Yeah. Look, a couple of other mentions. I thought we've already touched on Mark Kane, who I thought had an excellent night again down back, and obviously did the Leo Barry towards the end there, which could have been pivotal. And you rightly say, I think it was you, big man, that he benefits, whether it's Butts or Murray, he benefits from having that big, tall, key defender in the mix.
Yes.
It allows him just to play on the second forward, and I think that also allows him then to intercept a little bit more, play off his man a little bit more at times, and probably credit to Geordie for coming in and having good enough form that we don't have to cover his man. He's been pretty good one out, but Mark came pretty good last night.
Yeah, and it's been timely because he also hasn't been in great form for the majority of the season thus far, but his last 2 weeks have been pretty good. And I mentioned before, like, I didn't mean specifically that it was Butts that had improved his form, because Murray's been great in the past, and they gel well together last year when Muzz got back in the team. But it was more that the fact that he didn't have to play on the best forward, and it makes such a difference. With Murray being injured for most of the year, and even when he came back, he was obviously hampered. It sort of put a bit more pressure on Keeney. And look, Keen's got deficiencies in his game, particularly defensively, but what he does offer is some seriously clean pair of hands, and he takes risks with his kicks. I reckon most of the time they come off. Sometimes they don't, but I'd rather, for the way we play and the style that I want us to play, I think I prefer the way he goes about it than just being conservative down the line. I like what he's doing. He's got wrinkles, but he obviously didn't give away the free kicks as much on the weekend, and like I said, he's got such a clean pair of hands that when we can release him and take intercept marks, him and Josh, it's important, because we haven't really had that too much apart from Tommy Duday in the last few years. So I think he adds a different dimension to our team. We just needed him to be in better form, and hopefully the last 2 weeks are an indication that he's turned the corner there.
Yeah. Ranks, obviously, Brownie had an interesting game, probably not his most effective game in the midfield, but up forward when it mattered. He set a light for us late.
Yeah, I mean, 2 clinch goals close together. I mean, that was pivotal in getting us a reasonable lead that we just managed to hang on to. But yeah, definitely not his best game. But that's going up against Collingwood next week. It's good that some of these guys have, had probably average games, and they're going to be keen to make amends. And hopefully next week he shows us what he's got.
So why aren't we seeing a direct Rankin-Rochelle rotation? Because to me that stands out like the proverbial in terms of what would work really well, just to have those two in tandem working that third midfield spot. I don't understand why they're so hesitant to play Josh Rochelle more through that midfield.
Well, I think it's obvious, because it's an obvious move. So, the coach just isn't good enough to see it because it's too obvious.
Brownie, is it as simple as that? Is it just too obvious?
I think it's more I think it is obvious. I think he's just bloody stubborn. And he hasn't done it. And it's like he doesn't want if he does it now, it's going to be, well, why haven't you done that all the way along? But if you're coaching for your career like he is, you've got to be taking these opportunities when they present themselves. So it's definitely that he's just too stubborn to do it. But it's not stubborn, it's stupid.
Big man, do you reckon
it's so bloody obvious?
So who are you asking?
You, mate.
Oh, what was the question about about Nick.
Do you reckon it's just? Do you reckon it's just being stubborn that he doesn't play Rash more through the middle?
To an extent, yeah. I mean, I think it's pretty obvious that Nick is a stubborn bloke. I think I think there is some elements to his game that don't completely suit them being a full-time mid, or at least even a decent amount of centre square time. I agree that he's got some traits that are good. You know, I like his hands in tight. He's pretty clean. But his contested game, like just from what I've seen throughout the last few years and in training and everything, he can get caught a bit, and particularly when there's frontal pressure and he gets tackled, he still struggles sometimes to have that explosiveness and get rid of the ball like some of the other mids can. So I think he's still a work in progress with his contested side, but he can find the footy, and even just the fact that he'd be able to get his hands on the pill and involved that way, because he's a great decision maker. So we want the ball in his hands as much as possible, even if it's mostly uncontested. So like he works up the ground. I don't even have a huge amount of touches on the weekend, but when he works up the ground and takes marks, it usually results in scores. So I agree that at the very least, getting him in the midfield and around stoppage will help, because not only just to get him in the game, but because he makes good decisions. Even though he's not, he's not the finished product as a midfielder yet, but I still think he's underutilized there, as Zack Taylor as well.
It lights him up when he's there, and I would argue that he's never going to be the finished product as a midfielder if you don't freaking play him there. Like,
Absolutely.
how many times have we said this about players? If you don't play them in the position that they're suited to, how are they going to improve? And all right, we're top six and, blah, 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 all that. We're looking forward to maybe cracking a final spot this year. But for the bloody love of God, we're still a young side, and it's likely, like when you talk about our results this year, every big test so far we've failed. Gold Coast and Geelong, 2 big tests, we've failed. You could argue GWS, but GWS's form hasn't been great, although they won this weekend, but they're on a bit of a down patch. So we are still developing this squad. These are still young players. And when you see blokes like Dawson and that just getting sat on every week, when you see Soligo, I would argue, is suffering from having probably too many rotations and spending too much time through the midfield as a first rotation, and maybe could benefit from just having an extra pair of hands going through there. And you got Joshua Shelley, who his clearance to attendance ratio is off the charts, sitting on a forward line getting 7 possessions. You are wasting a massive weapon, in my opinion, and we've just got to get him more involved. And I think again it's a reflection of the fact that Nix just doesn't trust young players, doesn't trust them.
I think that's a fair sentiment, and I mean, I don't think any of us would disagree with you there, Fiend. Would you? I know this is leading a bit towards this weekend's game. I think Tex is I'd say he's a Monty to be rested, but I'm not sure we'll actually do it. He should be. But Soligo, he's showing the signs of someone that's just a bit cooked at the moment. Do you think, or any other boys here think that we could afford to rest him or even play him as a sub for this weekend against Collingwood? Because let's
throw it around. Brownie, what do you reckon?
Oh, not something I've really thought about. I mean, I thought he was still very competitive on the weekend, but maybe for a week. I think resting Tex that's pretty much a no-brainer. I think one for him, he needs to have a break if we're going to be playing him in the important part at the end of the year. But yeah, in terms of that's something I hadn't really thought about. But if you're going to do that, you've got to push Berry in there, and I think that's probably the trade-off if you did, because he's got fresh legs. He's only played, a part of a game 2 weeks in a row, so he really has to start, and I think that would be a very important move.
Mac?
Yeah, I disagree. I disagree. I think that what I would do, I'd just freshen him up at training, like just let him just have a very, very easy week on the track. But I think I would also bring Berry into the side, so that he got this extra minute, which means that he would have less rotations that way, and achieve it that way. I just think that Soligo still played reasonably well. I can't remember what his stats were. Were they?
12 kicks, 5 handballs, 7 tackles, 4 clearances. Not terrible.
That's still
just a few
that's
turnovers.
Not horrible. And so I would just give it a very light week, and I would play him next week. But I also, as I say, I think Berry in is a must. Just to come to give Berry is, when he's come on as a sub both times, he's done something, and he just looks, and he looks pacey, and he's hard, and he looks at an improved version of himself. That's the way I see him, anyhow. And go on.
Sorry, Mac. I was just going to say, I understand. I'm not saying Soligo played poorly. It's just that he's definitely had a drop off in the past 3 to 4 weeks when he started the season so well. So, whether there's an injury there that we don't know about, or whether it just hit a bit of a flat spot in terms of form, I just wonder if there's a way to freshen him up a bit, whether it's either this week or next week against the following week against West Coast, which you'd think is a chance to rest 1 or 2 players. But yeah, on the big expanse of the MCG, I just worry he's not covering the ground as well as he has in the earlier in the season, and he just looks a bit fatigued. So I just wonder if there's something going on there that maybe a rest could help fix potentially.
I reckon if he's carrying a niggle, and we know that Burgess likes to teach players to play with niggles and stuff, and that's all good. I think this is part of his development, and there's no better way to build a midfield engine than match day. You can run as many kilometres off season and in training as you like, but match day conditioning trumps everything. I do, though, wholeheartedly agree that if you compare the rotations from earlier in the season to now, we are using less players through the mid, and I think that even though Solly only spent 70% time on ground, that was 100% in the midfield. And I feel like you could obviously bring Berry into the mix. I think you could also bring Sid Draper into that mix. And imagine having a bit of a quartet of, say, Rankin, Rochelle and Solly working through half-forward and on the wing, as well as in midfield, and adding Sid Draper into that mix as well. And then having, Peatling and Sam Berry maybe as your workhorses, with a bit of Dawson thrown in there. Like, it just all of a sudden it makes us more versatile, and it allows blokes to stay in the game without having to endure, the coal face for the entire game, which is I think Solly probably tends to get, because he's still not a big lad, I reckon by the end of matches he gets a bit beaten up, because he's always in and under. He's always getting the hard ball. And I think he just, it's fatigue from impact more than anything else, I reckon.
Yeah, and I actually think, I'd have to go back to stats, but I reckon that Gold Coast game, he was so good in that game, but I think he works himself so hard to the bone that I think since then he's just looked a bit tired. He's not quite as sharp and explosive, and he's not finding much easy ball. His contested stuff's still been really solid. It's just he's just not getting around the ground and taking marks, and you want him getting the ball as much as possible because he's a classy player. So I just want to more dot. He raised the point before, how it's a free hit this weekend. I don't like the idea of sort of throwing games or anything like that, but I do agree that there's less pressure on us to win this week, particularly knowing that we've got West Coast at home the week after. That maybe we can just afford to manage players a little bit just during this section of before the bye. Particularly given that we don't have many injuries through the midfield. We don't have any, if we had an injury crisis with our mids, I could understand us needing to play Soligo, but we're pretty healthy in that regard. So apart from Crouchy, so with Berry and a few others like Draper and such in the wings, I just think maybe a couple of players could afford to get a rest. I was just throwing that out there anyway.
Yeah. Well, look, it's interesting. You mentioned Tex, and Mac, I bet you agree with me. There's no freaking way in the world that Tex gets rested against Collingwood. I reckon Nix is afraid to rest Tex because as much as after the first couple of rounds he's been fairly ineffective, he does draw another defender and it allows Fogarty and Thilthorpe to go to work a bit because the obvious replacement is Curtin up forward instead of Tex, which wouldn't have the same impact.
A very good point that you raised there, mate. That is a really good point in the sense that, I mean, even Tex when he's going poor will get some of the ball. I think what did he have, about 13 touches?
13.
Yeah, he had 13.
Yep.
Yeah, 13, which is not bad for a forward. He didn't kick any goals. But the point is, which is very, very valid that Feen made, is the fact that if you've got three guys that are potentially can kick goals, that is a real headache for any side to match up on. If you've only got two, it's a lot easier. If you've only got one, naturally, it's a lot easier again. But but I think that I didn't see any signs of fatigue in Walker, just the way the game was played. I think Feen's right. I think 100% he will play. The change that I would make is that if Curtin stays in the side, he would have to be the sub, and Berry starting on the ground.
One more before we move on, Brownie. Zack Taylor in the second half went on to Rosie after Neil Bullen got his pants pulled down in the first half and was pretty effective. I think Rosie only had 11 touches after half time, and apart from that missed snapshot, his influence dropped out. Zack Taylor's really earning his spot.
Yeah, he is. I thought that was a pretty tough gig to get given, and he did pretty well. I think Rosie probably got the points just, but he certainly nullified him to a point, and that was really what he was meant to do. But I like Zack Taylor. I think, was it you, big man, before, or not sure, that said he needs to be put through the midfield a bit more too. I think he's part of that rotation, and
100%.
But in answer to the question, I think he did a pretty reasonable job. I think Rosie was still effective, but he was ridiculously dominant that first half, so he definitely nullified him a bit.
Big man.
Like I know there was a comment on YouTube that suggested I was a bit of a Nix or Brodie Smith, a Crouch as well, like fanboy. And I'll admit,
don't read the comments, mate. You should know better than to read the comments on YouTube.
I thought it was funny, but I'll admit I'm a little bit of a Crouchy fanboy. But I'll tell you what I am is a Zack Taylor fanboy. I love the bloke. I think he could be a really good player for us. I just think he's got some things to work on still, but I think he's also being underutilized by our coaching group. But I thought that was an interesting call because when I think of Zack, I don't think of as much as he's a great tackler. I don't think of someone with a real defensive mindset. And there's a couple of times at stoppage, there was the goal or the snap on goal that missed from Rosie where Zack was caught flat-footed. And there was another one in the center where you could see Zack was ball watching and basically just wanted to get the clearance, and he left Rosie alone. Rosie didn't get the ball in that instance, but it just showed to me like, I don't know if this is the kind of player you want to play on him. But at the end of the day, he did a decent job. I don't think it's something I'd want to use going forward because I don't think it suits him, particularly given he's not exactly an aerobic beast. So so he needs. I want him to play the ball in his area. The fact if he has to go chasing tail for most of the game, I don't think that suits him. And I think that's something Neil Bullen should be better. And I'm surprised he was so poor that role.
Was surprised by that too because I made the call last week that I thought A and B should be sitting on Rosie if Rosie's playing back, and I was glad they had that, and he got absolutely towed up.
Yeah, and so that was interesting, but and at least that was a sign that we're flexible in some ways, but because obviously Rosie was having too much of an impact. But going forward, I wouldn't want to use that with Zack. If they're going to use Zack as a defensive forward, I'd much rather try and play him as at least in the guts a lot more because His clearance work and stoppage work is really good, even though he's not the biggest bloke. He's clean, he's clever, and he's so good in traffic. You want to get when he's in traffic, he makes the play slow down a bit. And we don't really have a whole lot guys like that in the team. So I think he can bring another dimension there. But I don't think he's had many CBAs at all this year. He's played almost entirely forward. So I'm not going to exactly getting too excited about him playing any midfield time. But hopefully he just keeps getting a gig in the team, because to be honest, like if he wasn't playing right now, he'd be definitely thinking about going home. And you couldn't. You would excuse him for those thoughts too. You know, he's out of contract and he wasn't getting much of a gig before Rochelle got injured. But thankfully, you know, we put him in. We've shown some faith in him. He hasn't like absolutely knocked the door down, but he was good last week. He was solid this week, and hopefully he keeps getting a game, because I think he'll reward the coaches if they just keep persevering with him.
Yeah, look, he's a neat player, and you know, he's got some challenges in terms of his aerobic capacity and etc. He's going to come under pressure from blokes like Draper and also Luke Pedlar, who's really found some form in the twos. Obviously, Sam Berry's around the mix as well, and you know, the forgotten man Schoenberg in the twos as well as Dowling. So, you know, I think we're going to have to expect that one or two of those players are not going to be on our list long term. If that was the case, as much as I like Zack Taylor, I wouldn't mind if it was him that ended up not being on our list, Mac.
Well, yeah, I don't think he's ever going to be a dominant player. I think he's got the makings of a handy player. You can only fit a certain number of players into the team, and he's one that's on the edge, and there's so many of them on the edge, and you know, they're playing in the twos, and if they got the opportunity, they might do every bit as well as he does. Having said that, I think he's done enough to hold his place at the moment, but it's a question of I don't know whether he's going to be the answer long term, in the sense when there are other players that very similar to him that are really knocking the door down to have a crack. And, you know, he's only...
Yeah.
I was going to say, if he got injured and got replaced, he might not get back in again.
I think that's probably the key, that he... it's not that he's not... I mean, he only had, 7 disposals or something, although 8 disposals, but his job was very much a shutdown role in the second half. But it's one of those situations where what he does really well, he does well, but he's not an impact player at the moment. And whilst you're right, he's not doing anything that you would think, he doesn't need to be in the team. By the same token, we've got blokes that are currently not in the team that potentially provide better value and, you know, a higher impact, Brownie, than maybe Zack Taylor. And maybe it's just a case that when those players are ready to go again, which Pedlar and Draper definitely are ready to go, that Zack's the one that gets forced out.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, yeah, Draper, that's just a matter of Nick's giving him a run. But Pedlar, if you throw your mind back to, you know, his best little patch was really, really good. And probably, you know, you'd say he was a lot more proactive and did a lot more than Taylor would do. And whether Pedlar can get that kind of form back. But he's showing signs. So I think...
Well, he's certainly been playing well in the twos the last 2-3 weeks.
But again, I do agree that Taylor has done enough to stay on the side. But, yeah, like Macca said, if he gets injured and he goes out, he's going to be at risk.
Finn, I was going to say that I don't think you can have too many good decision makers in your team. And I think the difference between a Taylor and a Pedlar, and look, Pedlar's got some qualities, no doubt. He's marking and his ability around goal, and he's got a bit of X factor. But what Taylor brings is he's such a great decision maker. He's one of those players that if he was playing for another team, I'd be like, I wish we had a player like him on our team, because we actually really haven't had a whole lot of players in the last 5 years who are highly skilled, great decision makers who can also win their own ball. He's not a particular. He got the skills of an outside player, but he is actually a fantastic inside player. So I think it's just a matter of time before he actually has a breakout game if we keep persevering with him. So I'm going to actually have to disagree with you boys on that front. Is that I think we need players like him in the team as much as a peddler offers something as well, and he has been in good form in the last few weeks in the sample, and he could play this week if we rest the Tex or something. But in terms of Taylor himself, I think we need to keep guys like Taylor in the team because these guys make the right calls at the right moments, and in the heat and in close games, if we can get the ball in his hands, he's going to 90% of the time he's going to make the right decisions and create opportunities for goals. So I'm just saying, back him in.
I don't disagree with anything that you say about his traits, mate. I just think that the pressure of other players who are higher impact might just force him out. There might just not be enough spots on the table for him. I don't ever see him being a first rotation midfielder for us. I don't see that. So then he becomes a second rotation midfielder at best. And I don't know. I agree with what you're saying about his composure and decision making, all the rest of it. I just don't see that he's going to be a mainstream mid for us, which then puts him in a pack with a whole lot of other players in other positions. And yeah, I don't know. Look, I guess I'm at the stage where if he was the one keeping Draper out, I'd say sorry, Zach. If he was the one keeping Luke Pedler at his best out, I'd be saying sorry, Zach. That's probably where I see him, very much on the fringe, Mac.
Yeah, look, I can understand a big man's point because I do think when he's actually played as a mid and a pure mid, when he does get the ball, he does make very good decisions with the ball. And I thought that, but you got to take it overall. Somebody mentioned in the chat that he only had the 9 touches, but he was asked to play a role that I don't think he's really cut out for, quite frankly.
Yeah, true. And did quite well.
To play on a half-back flank, so his job was more to stop Rosie rather than anything else. So I can't really judge him on that particular game. If I roll it back to games where he's been given an opportunity to mid, he hasn't gone too bad, actually. So I can understand why Big Man makes the point that he does, but I just don't see Nick's giving him that opportunity regularly. And if he doesn't, that means he's going to be vulnerable. What do you think, Big Man?
Well, I think we're playing him pretty much as a permanent forward, and he's got some forward craft, but it's certainly not his natural position. And that's okay because, he's only 22. AFL midfields are hard to break into, but at the same time, we saw on the weekend, we weren't exactly going gangbusters in there. So I think it would have been a good chance to bring him into the guts there and see if he could offer something different because, as I know Fiend said, he's not going to be a first choice mid, and that could be the case, but I think he's got the qualities you want from a midfielder. He's clean, he's tough, tackles well, and he's very good in tight and in traffic. So I just worry that, if we don't maximise his strengths, he won't have the opportunity to sort of show his wares at our club, and that another club will know what he's actually capable of. Because in his draft here, he's pretty highly rated by a fair few clubs. It was just more, his deficiencies, particularly his running and everything, set him back a bit. He was predicted to go a lot earlier than he did. We got him at 44. I think he was predicted to go in the second round and quite early. So there'd be other clubs sniffing, and particularly being a Victorian boy who hasn't been getting a lot of opportunity up until now. I just think that if we need to be smart about this and hopefully give him the opportunity he deserves. And if it doesn't work out, then it doesn't work out. But I'd hate for us to lose him and see him flourish at another club, because I think he could make us pay if he does that. So we've got him. Let's use him.
Yep. All right. Let's wrap that up then. I guess, a win's a win and we move on. So just before we get into the rest of the week's results and a little bit of a look at next week's game, we'll just have a quick look at our tipping comp and other little housekeeping matters. So don't forget, we're proudly supported by Want Sports Analysis for your sports analysis software. So get around them at once.sport if you are looking at something like that for your club or your junior club, or just being a nerd like the rest of us here. Tipping, whoops, wrong one. How many did Phoenix get this week? Phoenix, I'll tell you what, Phoenix got 5 this week, and the thing about that is that Phoenix didn't put his tips in, so that's pretty good. It shows you it doesn't really matter what I do. We got Michael S. still on top, along with Jordan on 59. We got J-Mac on 58. We've got Matty, Callum and Michael on 57. And then it goes on and on. So don't forget to keep putting your tips in. There are prizes at the end of it this year, and it looks like it's going to be a pretty close go. Macca, let us have a look at your weekend's results, your 15 minutes of fame, of course. And we'll run through them for you. We had Freo going down in a reasonably decent game against Collingwood, although Collingwood lost a couple during the course of the match. 12-11-83, defeated by Collingwood 15-7-97.
Yeah, on top of that, Collingwood rested 3 players, and they had another player out injured. So they were without four of their regulars, but it was a closely fought game. But in the end, Cameron was outstanding in ruck, and Elliott got 5, Bobby Hill got 3, which it's great to have little smalls like that up forward. And I think that was the difference. And the Pies, they just led throughout for a 14-point win on the road. So a very hard team to beat.
So the St Kilda Carlton game was weird because I felt like St Kilda should have won this game. I didn't feel like Carlton played that well, but they won 11-11-77 to St Kilda 9-8-62.
It was a horrible game. It was a bloody Ross Lyon game. It just he makes his team play in a fashion. It just makes a horrible spectacle. I think. I really hate him as a coach. But the Blues got him in spite. They had 2 players down in the first half of the game. So
that's right.
It was a good effort by them. DeConnick was good. The 2 key forwards were good, and for them, and Wanganeen Miller. Geez, I'd love to get that boy to Adelaide. I really would.
Yeah.
30 touches. He's a star.
Yeah, absolute silk. Or St Kilda won't make the 8 if they drop games like that. For all the good games that they win, like the win against Geelong and all that, they drop games like Carlton that they should have won. That they continually do that. Pardon me. Hawthorn 13-13-91 got up over Melbourne 7-14-56.
Yeah, look, the DJ matched with Hawks until 3/4 time, and Gorm was terrific, and Tracker was doing well, Bowie was doing well, etc. But then the Hawks just poured it on in the last quarter, and just right across the ground, and they ran over Melbourne. The Hawks, they're going to be a hard team to beat.
Yep. Essendon 11-5-71 over Sydney 8-15-63. A surprising result. Well,
I thought Sydney took a leaf out of our little coach's book because they should have won the game. They blew it. Essendon were all over them in the first half. And it was 9-1 to 2-4. I mean, that's a hiding. And in the second half, the Swans came out with their proper form, but they kicked 6-11 to 2-1 with 17 shots to 3, and it actually killed them, and it cost them the game. But they're not playing in the same fashion as they did with their previous coach. I think that Cox, the new coach, he's got to work a bit with them. Yeah.
All right, and then we had the Bulldogs not able to come back against the Suns 15-16, 106 to 14-12, 96. Proof that if you could kick more goals than the opposition, you usually win, Mac.
Yeah, well, the Suns, they're undefeated. They played 7 times up in Darwin, and they're undefeated up there. They would love it. And Actually, it's a real battle in midfield. Both midfields played very, very well, actually. But in the end, the Suns just were that little bit better, and they came away with a win. As I said, both midfields played very, very well, and it's just going to be who made the most of it, and then that was the Suns.
Yeah, and then we had the Giants reversing a bit of a slump and getting up. They don't, from memory, and I don't have the stats on this. I don't know, Big Man or Brownie, whether you do or Mac, but they tend to do all right down at Alphabet Stadium, don't they? They got up 16-9-105 to Geelong 14-17-101.
I think it's their fifth win in a row down there.
Three Rabbit says in the chat. Yeah.
No, I reckon at least four.
They said Kingsley hasn't lost coaching against Scott yet. So
yeah, no, it is five, as I said. Yeah, and having known that, I'm bloody stupid because I actually tipped Geelong, which really is insane, isn't it? But no, where are we?
Geelong Giants.
Yeah, I didn't actually watch the game, so I can't really say too much about it, other than the fact that I know that Hogan kicked 7 goals, and once you've got a full forward kicking 7 goals, and they haven't got it at the other end
very
as
important.
well.
He's very important for them.
Yeah. Yeah, perhaps Geelong did. Sorry.
So I was just going to say that it's amazing, isn't it, like how footy works? Like, you see how the Giants turned up against us, and they were a bit listless. And then a couple of weeks later, they play against Geelong and beat Geelong and Geelong, which they do regularly now. We could never do that. I could never trust us to beat Geelong and Geelong ever. So it's just funny how teams match up against other teams in different ways.
Yeah, and it's funny how just one kick can make a difference because Blitzovs, I think that's how you pronounce it. Thank you. 90 seconds to go, and Blitzov had a shot for goal, and which he should have kicked, but he kicked a point, and as a result, GWS got their 5 in a row.
Yeah, and then following on in the tradition of close games, someone posted on the chat, I think there was a Reddit poster that said this round has been the closest ever round in terms of margins for ever in history. Average of 10 something points or whatever.
Yeah, there were 2 losses at 15 points, and everything else was in single figures.
Yeah, there you go. So, the Tigers getting up over the Eagles by 2 points, 11-15-81 to 11-13-79.
Yeah, it was a good game, actually. And yet it could have been won by West Coast, or nearly got one. Young Ross, I think that's his first game, if not second at best. Running into about 50 metres from goal, decided to have a bounce first, and before he did his kick. And one of the players who ran him down made up about 15 metres on him in a matter of seconds, which and affected his kick. So, or it didn't get the kick, I don't think. And it really it was going to be a shot for goal, and with 30 seconds to go, that would have won the game. So, yeah, but it never happened. So they lost. And
then with a big semi-partial upset, because it was a draw, North and the Lions, 10-11-71 apiece.
Well, I thought North played out of their skins, quite frankly. Look, when you think of all the draft picks they've had, they've got some very good quality young lads there. And I did actually watch this particular game, and they had a chance again to win it, but they just failed that last little bit. They had a chance again. They had an opportunity to kick a goal as well, which could have won the game, but they didn't. So that's just the way it goes. And but look, they're improving. They are improving.
Oh, homo. Look, just a few. I think the difference between North and Eagles at the moment is that there's just a few signs of life with North. Just a little bit of a heartbeat at that club. Maybe they're on the precipice of starting to move up the ladder.
I think they are playing.
All right, so speaking of the ladder, let's have a look. We've got the Lions on 30 points out in front. Collingwood and Hawthorn on 28 points. The Suns on 24, but with a game in hand. Adelaide also on 24, entrenched in the top 5. Bulldogs and the Geelong and GWS on 20 points in the 8. And then also on 20 points, but out of the 8 is Essendon, but with also a game in hand. Carlton on 16, along with Fremantle, St Kilda and Port. Swans and Melbourne, 12 points, along with Richmond. You wouldn't like that if you're a Melbourne or Swan supporter, because Richmond were supposedly going to be negative wins by the end of the season. They were that bad. North on 6 points, and West Coast bringing up the rear. All right. So let's have a look at next week. Obviously, we're playing Collingwood at the G. Now, when's that on? Is that Saturday afternoon? Let's have a look.
First game Saturday, isn't it?
First game Saturday, is it?
Think
And
so.
as you mentioned, Mac, I think a few players under a cloud. Brownie, what are your thoughts?
Well, I'd be pretty happy if Dacos didn't make the game, but I think it's going to come down to how we can sort of remix our midfield. If O'Brien can just break even with Cameron, that's about all we can ask, I think. And we've just got to get some more grunt into the midfield. So, like you said, it'd be great to see Sid come in. Berry's got to come in for sure. And we've just got to get some more rotations through there and try and, if we can at least break even there, I think we're a big chance. I think it's just going to be, I think it'll probably be a shootout, a bit of a running game. So if we've probably got the advantage forward, I reckon. It's just going to come down to getting enough opportunity. And if we can break even in the midfield, I think that goes a long way to winning the game.
So, Mac, we haven't seen a propensity to mix it up through the midfield, but when you get absolutely destroyed like we did last week, surely he can't have the attitude of, we'll just back the boys in. Surely some changes have got to be made.
You realise you're talking about Nick Spain. What you said was too logical. It was far too logical. No, look, you're quite right, and it's interesting that Dacos was tagged, and he was tagged out of the game, quite frankly, by his standards, and had very little influence on the game. So I don't know who we've got that could do it as well as that, but we probably haven't got a player who could do it that well. But the point is that I think Cameron has been outstanding in ruck this year, and I think that he'll give Rob a bath, I think, and because Cameron does something that Rob doesn't, he hits it to his teammates, and that's going to be very telling, because if we lose the midfield against Collingwood, I think we'll be in trouble. I think they've got a couple of weaknesses down back, and when they have to play, what's his name, the bloke that left us and went there?
Frampton.
Frampton. When you've got to play Frampton, I think you're struggling down back, because he's only just a league football. Premiership
player, Frampton.
Understand that, but he's still only just a player in my opinion. So I think our forwards could go well down there, but it's a matter of supply, and that's going to start in the centre. And so I think our mids have got to really work very, very hard. We've got to stop Dacos if we can, and I anticipate Cameron will get a lot of the taps, and he's going to feed it to his players. And if we've got to try and break even there, if we can break even in the middle, we've got a chance. However, I'm tipping Collingwood to beat us by about 15 points.
Big man, changes this week?
Changes. Well, I was going to say, what's the bet that we actually have a decent game? It's to and fro. We actually come back, kick a few goals in the third or fourth quarter, get in front, maybe 1 or 2 goals in front, and then Collingwood kick back, and then they score a few goals, get in front, and then we get a bullshit free against us in the last 30 seconds, and then Collingwood win by less than a goal.
I've seen that movie before. We're going to have the sequel?
I think that's been the last 5 or 6 games.
Yeah, pretty much.
To be honest, yeah, we've always been pretty competitive against these guys, but we just can't beat them. It's probably going to be the case again this weekend. And look, if that's the case, then as frustrating as it'll be, at least we won't get blown away. And I don't think we will get blown away, as good as Collingwood have been this year. I think that, Mackie raised the point about a tagger. I think, we obviously don't tag, and that continues to frustrate me because clubs do it and the good clubs do it. And it's proved to be effective, particularly on guys like Dacos. Hugh Bond was really good on the weekend again in the SANFL. He was super clean. He did nothing wrong. He's someone that I could see us bringing in. Even if it's not to tag Dacos, then to play on Bobby Hill and free up Max a bit, because Bobby's obviously a really important player for them as well. I don't know if we'll do it, but I'm just saying that's an option we do have. Otherwise, I would rest Tex. If we're not going to rest him against West Coast, I'd definitely rest him this week, just because he's showing some signs of fatigue. And we talked earlier in the season, Fiend and Mac, it's easy to say that we're going to rest Tex throughout the year, but when push comes to shove, are we actually going to do it? And to date, we haven't. We didn't do it. We didn't do it against the Gold Coast, and we didn't do it against Freo when we had the opportunity, because injuries happen. And right now, why not do it this week and let him play well against West Coast? He could use the freshen up, get a week in before the next set of buys at least. So that's what I'll do. I'd rest Tex. I'd bring in Pedler for him, and I'd play Curtin as the third tall. And I'd look to move Berry into the midfield if possible. Who's that at the expense of? I'm not sure whether that's Saligo or someone else. That would be the tricky part, because I'm not sure they will do that. As much as we talked about it, I'm not sure they're going to rest Saligo, because he's pretty important to us. But they're probably the main two. I think Sid could still use a bit more time in the sample. I think he's getting the pill, but he's just a bit rushed at the moment. Charlie Edwards is interesting because he's playing some really good footy. It's just, how does he get in the team when you got Hinge, Miller, Cumming, and then Curvis in there? And as much as I thought Nate might have got dropped last week, he responded pretty well. He was probably one of our better players, particularly in the first quarter. So I'm not sure Charlie will get an opportunity just yet, but if he did, I think he'd look all right. I think maybe the following week against West Coast would be a chance to blood some youth.
Perfect opportunity. I agree with you, big man.
Yeah, he's just showing the signs of someone who's really confident in himself, and he's more physical with his play, and he's got some weapons. So, I hope we go down that route, whether it's not this week or it'll be next week, hopefully, because we had the opportunity last year when Oscar Ryan was in great form and we didn't use it. So hopefully we've learned our lesson and we can give him a game, whether it's this week or next. But yeah, I'd probably reward Pedler, even if it's as a sub, and I'd rest Tex and play Curtin as the in Texas role.
Yeah, look, I mean, not thinking about what they will do, but what they should do. I think Tex, just purely on form over the last couple of weeks, probably needs a bit of a break. And I'm with you. I'd bring in either Draper or Pedler, and move Dan Curtin down forward as our third tall to keep that sort of triple threat thing going. I think Zack Taylor probably makes way for Sam Berry as the sub, so I'd swap those two around. I liked what Luke Nankervis did. I thought he responded well, and he's just so versatile, Nankervis, in terms of his ability to play in different roles. Although I'd like to see him settled in a role, but anyway,
yeah.
This is another test for us. This is our third big test for the season. We've failed against Geelong. We've failed against Gold Coast. Collingwood, even with a couple out, is another legitimate test, and it's an away game. And if we're going to be a legitimate threat in the finals this season, we need to win a game like this very quickly, in my opinion. But I don't see us doing it, because I just don't think that not on talent. But I just don't think that Nix has got the chops to be able to counter what McRae will put up for him.
No, I don't think he, as a game day coach, he's just too happy to just let it flow and hope that things turn around. And I don't know whether his assistant coaches are much better or whether he just doesn't listen to them. But this is going to be a pretty tough game, I think. Everything would have to go right. And I do agree that, Walker needs to be rested and we need to try and change up that midfield and really make something happen. But no, I think Nix he'll be conservative, I would expect, and we'll probably go in with a pretty similar side, a pretty similar midfield rotation, and we'll be competitive. But I think, we'll probably go down, by 2 or 3 goals.
Yeah, so you reckon 2 or 3 goals. Matt, what were you saying, margin-wise?
15 points, which is 2 to 3 goals, yeah.
Yeah, big man, what do you reckon?
Well, if it goes the script of like the last bloody half a dozen games, it'll be a goal or less. So I'll go with that again.
I actually think it's going to be a blowout. I think we might...
Really?
Yeah, I think we might lose by 4 or 5. Because I don't think he'll make wholesale changes in the midfield. I think we'll get exposed again in the midfield. Collingwood have a pretty quality midfield, not unlike Port, but with a little bit more silk, which will mean that their clearances are just a little bit more damaging. They've got enough firepower up forward, and they've got a stronger defence that's probably more suited to covering our tools. Our best chance will be to gain a bit of an ascendancy in the midfield to get some quick inside 50s and get them on the lead. If we start going up and down the lines and bombing it in long, that's bread and butter for Collingwood. So, so I'm not terribly confident this week, and I think it'll be a 4 or 5 goal loss, and I think that will be a fair indication of where we actually sit. But look, if we get up, then it'll be a real step forward for the squad as well, and I'm certainly hoping that we do. I'm just not particularly confident.
They'll be fresh too, Fiend. They rested about 4 blokes going over to Perth, so fancy doing that, Fiend, resting blokes. I
know.
So they'll be good to go.
Resting blokes, and they've got an 8-day break or something as well. So
yeah. Sorry, Macca, you go.
No, I was going to say, look, even with all things equal, even if we still had the same quality side as Collingwood, who are a very good side, and then we were equal. Their coach is a very, very good coach, and our coach is not a very good coach. So I think, just that alone makes a difference in between the two teams.
It begs the question, I don't want to harp on this any longer, we're just about done, but it does beg the question when they're analysing Matthew Nix's performance, are they looking beyond win-loss? Are they actually thinking at the moment, well, we've got a positive win-loss ratio this year and we're making strides and all that, Matthew Nix must be doing a good job. Are they actually, do you think that they'd have the courage to look beyond that and go, despite the fact that we've got a positive win-loss ratio, there are some elements to Matthew's coaching that aren't up to scratch? Do you actually think that they're going to have enough critical analysis to be able to make that call? Because he's clearly not going to take us to a flag. There's just no way.
Yeah, I totally 100% agree with that. I just don't... The one thing about him, I think he's an honest man to some degree.
Oh, no doubt.
But that's not good enough. I want somebody that's crafty, devious, can think laterally, that can come up with ideas that nobody else has thought of before, make a move that's a winning move, that was a shock move at the time. He's just stock standard robot, and it's when things aren't going too good, he goes for the manual. What shall I do now? And he's just not. He's not an instinctive coach, in my opinion. He really isn't.
Well, I agree with that. Agree with that, and I think Brownie hit it on the head earlier too. That he's just bloody stubborn.
Well, the fact he made the comment that the coach has made the move earlier than I would have. And it makes you wonder who is actually coaching the bloody team. He's the coach. And he's saying that the coach has made the move earlier than I would have. And that tells you a lot about the guy.
What did he say?
He said that the coach has made
the coaches or the players?
No, it was the coaches. Correct me if I'm wrong, big man. But
I haven't seen I haven't seen the that interview. But if that's funny, if you refer to the coaches as everyone else but him.
Yeah, he said that
it's his job.
They said they subbed Berry earlier than he would have. That's exactly what he said. And he's got the title coach after the F&A, but he says the coach has made the move earlier than he would have. What's he, the water boy or something?
Well, two things about that. First is that I thought it was timely to get Berry into the game, so they probably made the right call, which means that he's got shit for brains. And secondly, it's like, well, who's making the calls?
And I look in the chat, and I think they're right. They're suggesting that it's probably Murray Davis making the move when he said, because he's sort of overseeing Nix's coaching.
He's supposed to have
thinking,
but he's not supposed to have a match day role.
Yeah, but I don't think that's true. I think he will have one in the sense that he's sitting there and he's saying something that's sticking out like a sore toe. And he's saying, "Do it."
Yeah, but I don't know. I think that's just speculation. I don't think Murray Davis has got a match day role. That wasn't his mandate when he came in. His mandate was to help the coaches and be a conduit to make sure that all the coaches are on the same page, and to provide feedback to the operations team and to the footy director. I don't think he's got a match day role, Mac. If he has got a match day role, then they are tiptoeing around an issue that they know that they've got. And I don't know, if I'm Matthew Nix and all of a sudden this other bloke's been given a match day role, I'd be thinking, well, that's not on. You can't be a head coach and have that sort of a situation, and you can't be a club that has a situation where your head coach doesn't have full control over match day, in my opinion. You're just papering over the cracks.
If it's not Murray Davis, and he did use the word coach. He's probably talking about the line coaches, and which would probably mean Van Burlow.
Surely, as a line coach, you say, "Hey, boss, I reckon it's time to get Berry on."
Yeah, I know. You would have thought that would have been the case. I don't know. I don't know whether it's Rafferty rules and they just do whatever they like, or do they consult Nix? Or when he made that statement, the statement sounds odd because it means that they seem to have the power to do that without consulting him, because he said they did it earlier than I would have. So it's a strange comment.
Put it this way: if they are running I can understand under certain circumstances that you give, in modern day sort of team environments, you give people autonomy and you allow them to have certain responsibilities, Brownie, but I don't think that necessarily works in our environment. And if Matthew Nix is going to bank his coaching future on the decisions of Scotty Burns and Nathan Van Burlow and the like, he's a more trusting bloody bloke than I would be.
Yeah, I'd be pretty surprised if there's any way that they would be able to do that without consultation, some kind of communication. But yeah, who knows?
Your camera's missed again, Brownie, but I wouldn't worry too much about it because we're going to wrap up.
That's all good.
We're going to wrap up. It looks like none of us are particularly confident about the Crows next week, but that's not to say that we don't want them to get up. So, look, I appreciate everyone in YouTube and on Discord joining us this evening. It's been lively chat on the chat as usual. It's been good chat amongst us tonight. Thank you, big man, for your attendance once again.
No, thanks, mate. And look, we are being a bit pessimistic because, there's the game plan and everything that worked on the weekend it wasn't the greatest showcase of what we can do, but at the end of the day, we still beat Port, so I'll sleep easy knowing that.
100%, 100% a showdown win's always a showdown win. Mako, don't you agree?
Yeah, look, I'm glad Big Man made that comment because I was actually going to make the same one. We've been a little bit negative about things that we saw that we don't think were done correctly or could have been done and weren't done at all. And we stand by those because that's what we thought. But don't for one moment think that we're negative about the club or that we're negative about winning. I love winning. And it doesn't get better than when you beat Port Adelaide because they love beating us and we love beating them. And look, it was a hard fought match, and forgetting all the things we said that could have been done, we still won the game. And a win's a win, and let's rejoice on that for the week. And because we know that the people that barrack for Port Adelaide will be shitting their pants and really angry about the whole thing. So that's good.
It's always good to beat Port and a brownie.
Absolutely, yeah. No, it's great. We've got that until later in the year. We've got bragging rights, so that's fantastic. And this week, yeah, whether we win or lose, I just hope we go back to playing some just really attractive attacking football again. That's my main goal this week.
And on that note, I reckon that's a good note to finish. So thanks everyone for joining us. Have a great week. We will see you next week for another weekend wrap. Until then, good night.
Yep, good night all.
See you guys. See ya.